The House That Waited. Chapter 1, The Return. The road back to Ash Hollow was smaller than Elena remembered. The trees had grown taller, their gnarled branches bowing inward, forming a green tunnel that swallowed the afternoon light. The deeper she drove, the more her phone lost signal, the more her chest tightened. When the GPS chirped, "You have arrived," she didn't need it to tell her. The house stood where it always had, crooked, silent, and waiting. She parked at the edge of the gravel drive. The tires crackled over stones that hadn't shifted in 20 years. The porch step sagged under her weight. The front door hung slightly open, groaning as if sighing her name. Inside, time had stopped. Dust lay thick as snow on every surface. A spiderweb shimmered across the staircase. The air was stale, heavy, as though it hadn't been disturbed since her mother's death. Elena ran her hand over the hall table, and froze. In the dust, a small set of footprints had disturbed the surface. Barefoot. Small. Leading down the hall toward the basement door. She remembered that door. The chipped blue paint. The way it never closed right after Tommy disappeared. The sound it made when the wind pressed against it, a faint tap, 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 like fingers asking to come in. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "Tommy?" The basement light flickered on by itself. Chapter 2, The Thing Below. Elena stood at the top of the basement stairs, hand on the rail, heart slamming. The light bulb swayed on its wire, throwing shadows that shifted like figures moving beneath water. Each step she took creaked louder than the last. The air down there was colder, damp, like the inside of a grave. The smell of mold and rot clung to her throat. At the bottom, she saw it, Tommy's red toy truck. The one he'd gotten for his 6th birthday. It was sitting upright in the middle of the floor, rocking gently as though someone had just touched it. Her breath caught. "Tommy," she said again, softer this time. From the darkness beyond the circle of light came a sound. Not footsteps. Something wet dragging across the concrete. Then a small voice, brittle, trembling, wrong, whispered, "You left me here." Elena's hands shook. No. No, I tried to find you, The toy truck stopped moving. Chapter 2, The Thing Below. Elena stood at the top of the basement stairs, hand on the rail, heart slamming. The light bulb swayed on its wire, throwing shadows that shifted like figures moving beneath water. Each step she took creaked louder than the last. The air down there was colder, damp, like the inside of a grave. The smell of mold and rot clung to her throat. At the bottom, she saw it, Tommy's red toy truck. The one he'd gotten for his 6th birthday. It was sitting upright in the middle of the floor, rocking gently as though someone had just touched it. Her breath caught. "Tommy," she said again, softer this time. From the darkness beyond the circle of light came a sound. Not footsteps. Something wet dragging across the concrete. Then a small voice, brittle, trembling, wrong, whispered, "You left me here." Elena's hands shook. No. No, I tried to find you, The toy truck stopped moving. A week later, a for sale sign appeared on the lawn. The listing online called it a charming fixer-upper with rustic character. The photos were grainy, but one detail always stood out, the basement door, cracked slightly open, just enough to see the first step descending into blackness. When the realtor arrived to take new pictures, she noticed a strange smell, damp, metallic. She tried to open the basement door, but it was stiff, like something on the other side was pressing back. She forced it open. The air that poured out was freezing. "Hello?" she called down. Her voice echoed back, then something else answered, a whisper, faint but unmistakable. "Don't leave me again." The realtor backed away, heart pounding, fumbling with her phone. When she reviewed her photos later, one image made her drop the device entirely. In the corner of the basement, half hidden by shadow, stood a woman holding a small boy's hand. The boy's face was turned toward the camera, pale and smiling. The woman's face was not visible, only her long hair hanging over her shoulder, and her hand clutching the boy's tightly. The listing was taken down the next day. But sometimes, at night, the neighbors say they see lights flicker inside the old house, and hear the sound of a small truck rolling back and forth across the basement floor. Chapter 4: The New Owners. The Parkers moved in at the end of autumn. To them, the house was just cheap, and they needed cheap. Ryan said he'd fix the roof before winter. Maria wanted to turn the old basement into a workshop. Their daughter, Lucy, just liked the forest behind it. On the first night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. No creaks, no pipes, no hum of life, just stillness, like the walls were holding their breath. Lucy woke around 2 a.m. to the sound of a toy rolling back and forth across her floor. She sat up, expecting it to be her own, but in the moonlight, she saw it wasn't. A red toy truck sat by her dresser, its wheels turning on their own. She whispered, "Mom?" The truck stopped. Then, from under her bed, a voice said softly, "Play with me." Chapter 5: What the Walls Remember. Maria didn't believe Lucy's stories at first. Children imagine things in new houses, especially old ones. But after the third night, she began to worry. Lucy refused to sleep in her room. She said the boy under the floor wouldn't let her rest. Ryan laughed it off until they both heard footsteps in the basement, slow, dragging, circling the walls. When Ryan went down with a flashlight, he found handprints in the dust. Small ones. Dozens of them. They led toward the far corner where the concrete had cracked. He knelt and noticed something beneath the surface, wood, maybe. A box? He dug with his hands until he uncovered an old floorboard hatch. It was nailed shut, the metal rusted brown with age. When he pried it open, a smell like old blood filled the room. Inside was a child's shoe, a tuft of hair, and a single photograph, 2 kids standing in front of the same house. On the back was scrawled, "Elena and Tommy, 1999. Maria felt something then, a cold breath on her neck, as though someone was leaning close to whisper. She turned, but there was only the dark. That night, she dreamed of a woman standing by Lucy's bed, humming softly, her face hidden behind her hair. When Maria woke, there were muddy footprints across the hallway, small, barefoot, leading from Lucy's door toward the basement. Chapter 6: The Last Light. By the 7th night, the house had begun to breathe again. The air inside shifted and sighed, as if something unseen was walking through the rooms. Ryan set cameras up, determined to prove it was all in their heads. But what they caught made him throw the laptop against the wall. In the footage, the camera by the basement door showed a figure creeping up the stairs, not fully formed, just a pale outline of a child. Behind him, something taller crawled on all fours. Maria found Ryan in the morning, sitting at the kitchen table, pale and silent. He whispered, "She's not gone. She never left." That night, the power went out. Lucy began to scream. Maria ran upstairs. The walls were covered in words, written in red dust and grime. "I waited. Don't leave me again. Family stays." In Lucy's room, the window was open, the curtains blowing inward. Lucy stood in the center of the room, holding the red toy truck. Behind her was a woman, her hair long, her skin gray. She smiled faintly when she saw Maria. "Thank you," the woman said in Elena's voice. "He's not alone anymore." The light from the hallway flickered, then died. When the police came 3 days later, the house was empty. The beds were unmade, food still on the table. Only one thing was left behind, a family photo on the mantel, the Parkers, smiling, and beside them, a woman with long hair, one hand resting on the shoulder of a little boy. The photo wasn't taken by anyone in this world. Chapter 7: The Investigator. 6 months later, the house was empty again. The property value had plummeted, the grass swallowed the path, and the locals whispered about the thing in the basement. That's when Daniel Hodge came, a paranormal investigator with a small online following and a love of old tragedies. He set up cameras, microphones, and a night vision rig in every room. On his first night, he recorded whispers. By the second, doors opened and closed by themselves. By the third, he found a message carved into the basement wall that hadn't been there before: "Welcome back." He thought it was a prank, until he found the Polaroid. It lay face down at the bottom of the basement stairs. When he turned it over, his breath caught. It showed him, standing in the basement, camera in hand, but behind him, in the photo, stood a small boy and a woman with her head tilted toward his shoulder. Daniel hadn't taken that picture. That night, he recorded himself sleeping. At 3:14 a.m. the camera caught the blanket lifting, slowly, as if small hands were crawling beneath it. He never uploaded the footage. Chapter 8, The History of Ash Hollow. Daniel's research uncovered what the town tried to bury. In 1999, Tommy and Elena lived in the house with their mother, Ruth. The father had died young. Everyone said Ruth was not right after that. One autumn night, Tommy disappeared. Ruth told police her daughter did it. Elena told them her mother did. Neither was ever charged. Elena was taken away, Ruth died alone, and the house sat untouched until decades later. But in a forgotten box at the county archive, Daniel found something worse, a sealed letter written by Ruth herself. He talks to the walls now. He says the house listens. He says it promises him a sister who won't leave. I hear them whisper at night, not just my children. Others. Old ones. They tell me to keep the door open. If you ever find this, close the house before it takes another. Daniel dropped the letter. He realized then that the house wasn't haunted by people. It was something older. It became what people left behind, their grief, their rage, their love turned inside out. He decided to leave that night. But the front door was gone. Only the wall remained. Chapter 9, The House That Waited. 3 days later, local police found Daniel's van parked at the end of the driveway. His cameras were still recording. Every screen showed the same image, the basement, empty except for that old red toy truck, rocking back and forth. The authorities sealed the property, condemned it. But the neighbors said they still heard noises, voices calling names, sometimes laughter. Sometimes crying. In spring, a construction company was hired to tear the place down. The first swing of the excavator cracked the foundation, and the crew swore they heard children screaming from underground. When they dug deeper, they found a second staircase beneath the basement, hidden under layers of rotted wood. Inside were hundreds of handprints, pressed into the walls, small, adult, ancient. And at the bottom of the steps, a room. Empty, except for a camera, still running. Chapter 9, The House That Waited. 3 days later, local police found Daniel's van parked at the end of the driveway. His cameras were still recording. Every screen showed the same image, the basement, empty except for that old red toy truck, rocking back and forth. The authorities sealed the property, condemned it. But the neighbors said they still heard noises, voices calling names, sometimes laughter. Sometimes crying. In spring, a construction company was hired to tear the place down. The first swing of the excavator cracked the foundation, and the crew swore they heard children screaming from underground. When they dug deeper, they found a second staircase beneath the basement, hidden under layers of rotted wood. Inside were hundreds of handprints, pressed into the walls, small, adult, ancient. And at the bottom of the steps, a room. Empty, except for a camera, still running.